Good evening out there, ladies and gentlemen. We are back for episode number 35 of Empire State of Baseball, a special Thursday night edition. This is December 22nd of the year 2022. Well, listen, we thought we were done for the year. We did not expect to have another show until our Hall of Fame special, which is later in January. But here we are, 2 days before Christmas. Christmas came a little early for the ESB fan crew out there with the early episode just prior to the holiday. But from a Mets standpoint, we had a major blockbuster news that shattered across MLB baseball this past week. Carlos Correa's massive $350 million contract with the San Francisco Giants has fallen through. The physical held it up. And as Met fans were snoring the night away, Steve Cohen was on the phone and brought in Correa. 12 years, $315 million. Joe, how are you feeling on this fine Thursday evening?
Listen, it is a good day to be a Met fan. It's a good week to be a Met fan. It is a good time to be a Met fan, and not something that we have ever really said outside of a couple of years here and there. Cohen with the midnight robbery. Midnight, it was 3 o'clock in the morning. He was in Hawaii, which is the only reason he was up. Boris said everybody else went to bed. Cohen was sipping on a martini with 3 olives, and he gets himself a new third baseman for, I think it was $315 million over 12 years.
Yep.
It is something to behold. Crazy enough, our guest host, John Hernandez, was up at the time sending text messages in our group that nobody saw until 5:30 in the morning. And, it is quite the turn of events. The Mets pull off the steal. San Francisco is left with absolutely nothing. Their fans are riding. They're ready to fire their general manager. They're ready to kick out ownership off the Golden Gate Bridge. But as far as Cohen's concerned, he is not only the king of Queens, he is the king of baseball at the moment.
Oh, yeah.
There is no one out of Cohen's reach.
That's
and he just proved that the other night.
100%, that's for sure. And as you could all tell, I mean, 95% of this show is going to be about Carlos Correa, maybe touching a little bit about what's next for the Mets. But before we go any further on this Correa talk, which, I can't wait to dive into, if you want to follow us on Twitch, go ahead and subscribe. Empire State of Baseball on Twitch. The link is also in our Twitter bio at ESB Podcast on Twitter. It's the easiest way to follow us. You will get a notification as soon as we go live. So again, download Twitch today, Empire State of Baseball. Well, here we go. Carlos Correa, we said it before, 12 years, $315 million, a little less than his deal with the Giants. He was $350 with the Giants, that deal that fell through. And it was all about the failed physical. The Giants went ahead. They scheduled the press conference. The jerseys were on sale in the stores. Some poor child is going to be opening up a Giants #1 Correa jersey on Christmas morning, and I feel bad for that child. But listen, let me tell you, this is a bat right now that we're adding to the Mets lineup that they desperately needed. They always felt like they were one bat away. And I love Escobar. I thought Eduardo Escobar was a nice pickup last year. Fielded a very good third base for the Mets. His bat wasn't the best. He woke up a little bit late, but he definitely started off slow. But they're bringing in a proven winner, 2-time All-Star, World Series champion. Look at Correa's season last year, 291 batting average, 22 home runs, 64 RBIs, OPS of 834. Pretty good numbers to add to third base, and you could pretty much slot him anywhere in that lineup. I've seen him hitting in the 2 spot, the 3 spot, the 5 spot in projected lineups. Going to shift to third base because we already have Lindor, another prize shortstop, under a long-term deal locked up at short. But let me tell you, that left side of the infield, Joe, is looking hot right now, and I do not expect a lot of balls to get through that left side.
Yeah, listen, I mean, even more so than just the offense and just the power, Correa is a premium glove at least shortstop, and I would imagine that that's going to translate to third base fairly easily and fairly well. The Mets, here's the thing with Correa. Correa is not the kind of guy who can be your primary superstar and your team is going to succeed. What Correa is extremely good at being is a very, very good player that takes advantage of the big moments. We've seen that. He has 18 career postseason home runs. He's a 280 lifetime hitter in the postseason. He is a guy in this lineup with the Mets where he does not have to be what he was for the Twins. The Twins looked for a guy who was going to be their three-hole hitter, who was going to hit 30-plus home runs, who was going to carry the offense. He does not have to do that here. He is a complement to a batting title winner in Jeff McNeil, a 40 home run silver slugger in Pete Alonso, a guy in Lindor who is as good, if not better, than he is at shortstop, a guy in Marte who's a former batting title champion and a stolen base leader, and Brandon Nimmo, who might be the best leadoff hitter in the game. So he does not have to be the primary point of offense, but what he does and how he does it lengthens this lineup and gives you a legitimate threat every single time that he gets up to the plate to be a game breaker. And that is something that we needed desperately. And listen, if we come in expecting Correa to hit 35 home runs, driving 140 runs, you're not looking at the right guy. You are getting a guy who's going to play plus defense and who's going to be a solid bat in that lineup every single day. And I think in this particular case, it is going to work because he doesn't have to bat 3. He doesn't have to bat 4. He can bat 5. He can bat 2. He can bat wherever he is, and he can be complement to the guys already there. And I think that's why it's a perfect move.
Yep.
The Mets. Here's the thing with the Yankees, and as just as an example, the Yankees are driven by star power in terms of guys who are like Aaron Judge, who is so much better of a hitter than everybody else that's how they beat you. They bludgeon you to death and take advantage of it. Whereas the Mets right now are building a team where they don't necessarily have that one guy who is so far and away the best player at his position in MLB. They have a lot of guys at every position that can hit. And there is no weak spot in the Mets order where a lot of other teams have that weak spot. You could throw a catcher, but that's
and catcher across the board is typically your weakest spot for most teams, unless you're the Phillies with Real Muto. But that's an oddity to have a stud catcher hitting wise. But yeah, across that lineup, there's really not a lot of holes, even at the very bottom there. Right now, you have Vogelback probably 7th spot in the order, Canna 8th, the catcher spot 9th. I mean, you could do a lot worse than Vogelback, Canna, and Nito or Navarez, another pickup for Mets' new catcher. Hitting at the end of the order there. So you could do a lot worse than that for sure. But listen, I think you hit on the head with Correa too. Bringing him in right now, he doesn't have to be the superstar. On the Giants team, he was the superstar. He was the face of that team. It's not the case with the Mets. You already have a star in Lindor. You have a homegrown star in Alonso. You have Nimmo at the top. You got Marte, very solid player, probably going to hit right after him. If assuming Correa hits 5, you'll have Marte probably hitting 6. You have a lot of good players on this team. So Correa doesn't have to be a superstar, but what he's going to come in here and do is he's going to be clutch. He's going to give you top-notch defense, and that goes with the Mets recipe. The Mets recipe is dominant pitching, high-end starting pitchers, and they have that. You have a Scherzer. You just brought in Verlander. You brought in Senga, who could potentially be another ace. We'll see what he brings to the major leagues this year in his MLB debut. But you have a nice, solid pitching staff. And look at the bullpen, too. Best closer in baseball. I don't care what Tom says with what's his face, Clache. Yeah, out in Cleveland. But you have the best closer in baseball with Edwin Diaz. You brought in Robinson, great setup guy to bring in. I wanted them to get Robinson back last year at the trade deadline, so you're bringing him in now. You brought back Ottavino. I thought that was a phenomenal re-sign. Ottavino was very good for the Mets down the stretch. Now he's probably your 7th inning guy, maybe your 8th if Robertson's getting the day off or whatever it might be. And they're going to possibly add more, and we'll get into it a little later, but there are talks that the Mets are not done adding to that bullpen, so we'll see what moves may come up a little later. But with Correa, like we said, he doesn't have to be a superstar. He's going to give you top-notch defense to go with that high-end pitching to try and shut the teams down. And he's a guy, this is another big thing. He's been there, he's done that, and this is a guy who I think takes the stress and that comes with the pressure, and it helps him thrive. This is a guy who's been to the World Series. He's won the World Series, thrived in the playoffs throughout his career. I don't think we're going to have a situation like a lot of stars do when they come to New York and the pressure is high. A lot of times it takes them a while to adjust, or they just completely fold. Jason Bay completely folded. Carlos Beltran, rough 2005, very great 2006. Lindor, bit shaky in 2021, very nice year last year. I don't even think we're going to have that 1 year gap when it comes to Correa. I think he's going to be exactly what we expected from him from day one.
Yeah, and this is a guy, I mean, he is basically universally hated by Yankee fans. He's thrived in games in the Bronx. He's thrived under that pressure. It almost fuels him to be booed and to be mocked and to be jeered. So I don't see that being a factor with Correa. He is a big time personality. He loves the limelight. He loves the high pressure situations. So I think that he is a flat out competitor to his core, and that's going to be not a non-issue for me. You know, the one thing, not to try and throw cold water on something, the one thing I do worry about a little bit here is when we take a step back, and obviously we as Met fans are on a high right now, that we are extremely aroused is, I guess, the right word. We're crazy about this team. We're crazy about this owner. We're crazy about everything. I think we're not also looking at the long-term risk that is associated with this contract. And there is some risk. Correa's had an injury history. He's been on the IL. For now, the Mets can absorb that because for now they have Eduardo Escobar. If Lindor or Correa get hurt at any given time, you have their replacement on the bench who's probably going to fill in at times. Correa can always slide it over to shortstop if Lindor gets hurt, and Escobar can play third. But, 12 years is a long time. And for at least the next 8 or 9 years, these are your guys. And if you don't win with these two guys, there's even Cohen's going to have a limit at some point. I don't know what that will be, but these guys, they're not going to be movable at least until the back 2 to 3 years of their contract. If Cohen at that particular time, absorbs them and says, all right, whatever, I'll cut him with 2 years left. Like, that is what it is. But, we're here till 2030 basically, and these guys got to win something.
Yeah, no, we definitely have a little bit of a ride with Correa. And the 12 years, is it a lot of years? Yes. But this team, it's clearly in a win now situation. Yeah. You got a Hall of Famer in Scherzer and a Hall of Famer in Verlander topping your staff. Both of these guys are not going to be around at the halfway point of this contract, let alone the tail end of the contract. So there's a clear win now window. This was a team that up until the last week or two of the season was on pace to win their division. 101 games, again, that 100-win team. This is a team that's meant to win now. They were missing a couple of pieces, though. You saw that fatigue start to set in last September. Last September, that was supposedly the easy part of the schedule, is when the team started to falter a bit. Some of the weaknesses got exposed. Maybe a guy like Scherzer with the oblique injury wasn't up to it. Not 100%. And in the playoffs, the bats kind of got shut down. They lost 2 of 3 to the Padres, winning the DeGrom game. But even that game, the offense was pretty good, but they got completely shut down the third game against Musgrove. But you're bringing Correa, you're bringing a veteran. The goal is to win now. We'll worry about the back end of the contract when we get there. But are there some concerns to think about? Yeah. I mean, the only reason he's here is because he failed the physical. And we just mentioned he's a guy who has missed some time with injury due to his career. But supposedly with the physical, and what I'm reading is that with Correa, they actually were looking back at an ankle injury that he suffered in the minors back in like 2014. How true it is that was the exact reason they wanted to get out because of the injury, or was it a little bit of buyer's remorse and they found an excuse? They did
Yeah.
get a lot of heat for that contract when they doled it out.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. I think it was cold feet. I think they look. I think the Giant. I think what happened was the Giants took an honest look at themselves and said, "Okay, we got Correa. What's next? We're out of free agents this year. Maybe we're looking to next year and we don't see anybody that significant that's going to move the needle. Our farm system is not great, and basically we just put a guy at a position where our top prospect is a shortstop. So maybe it was a little bit of a self-evaluation after the fact. Maybe it was a little bit overcompensating for the fact that they lost out on Judge, who was their main target. I'm not 100% sure. I don't think anybody is except for the GM and owner of the Giants. But they certainly did not make an effort to maintain, after the medicals came out, to maintain that communication with Correa and say that we still want you here. We're still willing to negotiate, maybe take a couple of years off, take some money off, whatever it is. Let's make it work. They seem to have no interest in that. And that is very strange to me. And I know Boris is kind of like a shark in the water. The second that he got a moment of weakness and he got an out, he went and secured his client the next best contract he could.
And there was always a lot of talk with Correa that he wanted to come to New York. And it wasn't the Mets necessarily. There was always talk that he wanted to play with the Yankees. And a lot of Yankee fans also saying they wanted Correa. They really wanted him on that left side of that infield. And Correa is in New York, but it's not in the Bronx. It's in Queens.
Yeah.
He's with one of his best friends, Lindor. It's interesting.
It's almost eerily similar to what happened with A-Rod and how A-Rod ended up coming to the Yankees. And
True.
The Yankees had one of the best shortstops in baseball at the time. And A-Rod was a better shortstop. I don't care what any Yankee fan out there says. A-Rod was a better shortstop. And Correa, in all fairness, might be a better fielding shortstop than Lindor is. But he's coming to a team where the team is committed to a decade-long contract or having that person as their cornerstone shortstop, and they're moving positions. Lindor and Correa are boys, so I don't see as much friction as there ended up being with the Yankees and A-Rod, but all of it seems eerily similar, minus the fact that A-Rod was a trade and what went on with that stuff. Yep. But it feels very similar to that, and I think that I think it's an interesting scenario. Listen, here's the one thing, and we'll get to this question in a second. I like this question.
That's a good question.
Here's one thing that I worry about a little bit with Lindor and Correa. With these two guys as your cornerstone, both over $300 million contract, you got $600 and almost $50 million reserved for these two players. The one thing that I kind of am worried about a little is that neither of these guys is a top 5 hitter in the game of baseball. True. That's what I worry. When I dole out that massive money, I expect production offensively like a Judge, like a Trout, like an Ortiz was, like an A-Rod was. Those guys are so far and away superior sluggers to these two. That's what worries me a little bit. As they slow down in the older ages, that their bats will not be enough to carry this team. And that's what's going to worry me going forward, especially once you get to the next CBA. The owners are going to curb this. They're going to find a way. Whether or not Bowen cares is another story. But what I worry about, and this is what I worried about when we signed Lindor, that Lindor is not enough to be your $330 million player. He is not good enough offensively to be that player. And that's my biggest worry with these guys. I don't think either of them is. Now, if you say the next 5 to 7 years, it's them plus Alonso plus McNeil, and let's say Alvarez is the real deal, then okay. But what's that going to look like? We still have to lock up Alonso. I would like to lock up McNeil as well, We'll see, but that's my primary concern. And we can throw Nimmo in there. Nimmo's an 8-year deal too.
True. Yep.
None of them are 35 plus homers.
Correct.
With a 550 slugging percentage.
Yeah.
And those guys don't grow on trees.
It's
but
tough.
That's what you need when you're paying out two of the top contracts in all of baseball.
Yeah, exactly. Because I mean, like you said, the only pure slugger is Alonso in that lineup.
Mhm.
You look at a guy like Lindor, look at a guy like Correa. They're 5-tool players. They're complete players. But like you said, they're not top 5 hitters in the game. Alonso is a top 5 power hitter in the game of baseball. Lindor and Correa are top 15, top 20 players in the league. Yeah. They're not top 5 hitters in the league.
And even Alonso's not.
Yeah.
I mean, Alonso is a top
Correct.
power hitter, but he is not what would deem an MVP level slugger. Correct. I mean, he is a 260, 45 home run guy at any given time, which there's nothing wrong with.
Yeah.
But he's not
an A-Rod in his
Freddie
time.
Freeman is. He's not what A-Rod is. He's not what Paul Goldschmidt is. He's not that guy. He's not what Judge is. And, again, the Mets right now are kind of a sum is better than the individual parts. But eventually it might move to the parts are not enough, as people come in and out. And if you're not a factory like the Dodgers, which I know is the goal, that could be a problem. But we'll see. For now, I like it. For the next 5 years, I think we're good. It's long-term where I worry about.
Yeah, the long-term, definitely got to keep an eye on it for sure. One last stat before we move on. We do have a little other Mets topics to discuss today. I'm looking at active WAR leaders. And again, a lot of people may like WAR, they may not like WAR, but I'm going to call it out anyway because it's a very relevant stat for this type of conversation. Active WAR leaders for players under the age of 30. Who's number 1? Carlos Correa at 39.5 WAR. Who's number 2? Francisco Lindor, 36.6. And then you got Bregman, Trey Turner, and Matt Chapman right around 30 or so. So Correa and Lindor, the top 2 of players under 30 in terms of WAR. Trey Turner, we had a lot of conversation about him a couple of weeks back when he signed with Philly. Same type of thing. Helps that lineup win now. Tail end of the contract, that's going to be a rough one. But we'll worry about that when we get there. Right now, this is a win now team. The goal is to win within the next 3 to 5 years. At the time that Cohen bought the team, well, guess what? This is year 3 coming up with Cohen. So let's see what happens. But anyway, we do got to move on. But before we do that, Joe, how could everyone follow us on social media?
All right. On social media, you can follow at Empire State of Baseball, on Instagram, at ESB Podcast, at G Gory for Corey, at JR Pugs for myself. Rich is at Rich J Rivera, and Tom is at 2Spill or T Waspel on Twitter as well. So you can follow us on all the apps on your phone or on your browser if you do social media on the browser. So I do want to get to real quick before we get into what's next for the Mets. I love this question. What is a better infield? The 2009 Yankees with Teixeira, Cano, Jeter, and A-Rod, or what the 2023 Mets will be with Alonso, McNeil, Lindor, and Correa? This is an excellent question. I like this question a lot. I remember a time in 2000 where the Mets had the quote-unquote best infield ever on Sports Illustrated. I think that's been surpassed a couple times. As much as I love that infield of I think it was Olerud, Alfonso, Ordonez, and was it Ventura?
Ventura, yep.
Yes. That was an all-time great Mets team, but this is a great question. So, Corey, I'll ask you the question first. Which infield is better, and which, if you had the team, had the choice today, which would you take?
It's a very good comparison. And if I look around the the infield here, comparing the two teams, I will say of the 2009 version of Jeter, I'm going to take Lindor over Jeter at this stage of where they are in their careers. Jeter, the better player, better career. I mean, Hall of Famer. But in 2009, I'm going to take the younger Lindor right now, better fielder. But I'm going to give the edge to the Yankees in this infield. A-Rod, I mean, he was a great fielder at third base. He was an MVP at third base, one of the best players in the game of baseball. We're just talking about top 5 player in the league or not. He was a top 5 player in the game. So A-Rod, I'm going to take over Correa. I'm going to take Lindor over Jeter only in that particular time of his career. Cano, 2009, was a 320 hitter. McNeil, 320 hitter, very similar. And Teixeira and Alonso was kind of a push. Teixeira, I think, is a better glove. I mean, for sure is a better glove. I think Alonso has more raw power, but Teixeira was a great overall hitter. I'm going to give the edge to the Yankees, but overall, it's a very good comparison.
Yeah, I mean, it's close. I kind of go back to what I was saying in the previous segment where these guys, as good as they are for the Mets, they're not those premier hitters in the game. A-Rod at that particular time was a premier hit. I mean, he was the best hitter maybe in all of baseball outside of Albert Pujols or Miguel Cabrera. So he kind of puts it over the edge. I think the Mets are a better defensive infield than the Yankees are at that particular point in time. I mean, Lindor and Correa are Gold Glove calibers. I think McNeil should actually be a Gold Glove caliber there. I think McNeil actually comps much closer to Derek Jeter in terms of his numbers. If you look at Derek Jeter hit 334 in 2009. So I think McNeil and Jeter have very, very similar numbers in terms of what they produce at this particular point in time. But the power that comes from the Yankee lineup,
That's between
A-Rod, Cano, Teixeira, I mean, those guys are all 30-plus home run guys. Yep. Whereas the Mets might have one 30 home run guy at the end of 2023. They still might be okay, but that's what kind of pushes over for the edge. And let's be real, the Yankees have 2 Hall of Famers. Well, they have 1 Hall of Famer on here, and they have 2 other should-be Hall of Famers, if not for steroids. And Teixeira, who at least had a conversation of becoming a Hall of Famer. So I do have to give the edge to the Yankees. But listen, the 2023 Mets infield is the best infield in all of baseball right now. There is no question. And that's something that I think is a big that's a big thing. In the current time, the Mets are the best of the best, and the 2009 Yankees might be the best ever in terms of an infield.
Definitely. I agree with that statement 100%. And the Mets, I agree. Best infield in baseball right now. I'm going to take this Mets infield. In terms of the lineup itself, a lot of comparisons against the Phillies lineup and the Mets lineup. I think the biggest difference between the two, and again, we've been hitting this like crazy tonight, it's the power and the slugging. The Phillies have a better slugging lineup. I do think the way the Mets lineup is built might be a little more consistent, more of the contact-oriented guys than the Phillies. I mean, you got some 220 hitters in there. Schwarber, I'm looking right at you. But, I mean, he could slug 40 home runs any given season. And Hoskins, too. So it's definitely a good comparison. NL East is going to be awesome to watch this year. Again, we're talking about Mets, Phillies. Don't count out the Braves. I mean, they just won the World Series 2 years ago, won the division last year. So it's going to be a fun season for sure. But anyway, back to the Metropolitans. This offseason that's in progress, this last month or so, they have committed $806.2 million for 9 different players over the course of free agency. And we talked about a little bit in our offseason preview episode, which is just about a month ago. It was right before Thanksgiving. And I said, the Mets are going to have to spend a ton of money just to maintain the team that they had last year, let alone improve. Well, they spent that that money for sure. It is crazy. Right now, the payroll for the New York Metropolitans, I just want to get like the exact number. So I don't
know if anybody has an exact number yet.
I know it is crazy, but I can tell you that right now, the Mets payroll penalty, just the penalty alone is 111 million, assuming nothing, no other trades, no other acquisitions. And that's more than a bunch of teams in baseball. I mean, you got teams like the Pirates, teams like the Marlins, the Guardians, the Royals, the Reds, the Rays, the Twins, the Diamondbacks, the Nationals, the Athletics, and the Orioles. The Mets penalty for going over the tier 4 luxury tax is greater than those teams' entire payroll. And here's the number: 300, again, assuming no other acquisitions, no other trades, $384 million. I mean, we went from the Wilpon era, where in the 2013 offseason, 2012 to 2013 offseason, they spent $4.5 million on MLB spending to bring in Sean Markham as your big free agent pitcher. Sean Markham at $4 million that offseason. They spent $800 million total this year. It's absolutely insane right now.
It's crazy. I mean, it is such a reversal from where we were with the Wilpons. I mean, Cohen is the absolute king of the owners. He is richer than everybody else. He's not afraid to show it. He is a lifelong Met fan. He is going to do anything to win. You know, I can see it coming down after he gets one or two, if he gets a title. But for now, he's here to do one thing and one thing only. He's bring the Mets a championship. And he is going to spare no expense to do it. It is absolutely wild. And the crazy thing to think about is the Mets might not be done.
No,
they might not be done. They still are talking about adding a bullpen arm and maybe even another bat. Liam Hendricks is being brought up in the conversation. He's making $14.5 million next year. So the Mets at this particular point in time, there's no idea of where they might stop. And whatever they're going to be at opening day is going to be the best product they possibly can put on the field. I know Cohen and Epler are going to absolutely commit to that. They have. And listen, you know, this is the new world we live in. You know, after years of watching Steinbrenner across the BQE or whatever it is, just sign guy after guy. The Wilpons never committed to anything beyond Jason Bay. You know, it's crazy to think where we have come to now never being out on anyone. I mean, that's the thing. And the best part about this is you don't have to be. I don't think the Mets were really in on Correa until they sensed weakness in the market. They got in late. Boris basically was like, listen, I negotiate with you, but in good faith, I'm already in too deep with these guys. They fell apart, and the Mets, and it was one phone call, and it got done. And I feel like if the Yankees didn't lock up Judge, I felt like the Mets would have probably been in the same situation where you hang around enough, and Uncle Stevie says, I'm one phone call, guys. If you need a contract, just call me. We'll figure something out. And that's it. And that's the brilliance of this. Everyone comes to the Mets now instead of where we used to be, where they wouldn't even engage with us. And it's just it's such, as a Met fan, it feels great because we've gone through years of suffering and years of ownership not putting their best foot forward. And now we're so to the extreme of do anything we possibly can. It's a great feeling. It really is
such a great feeling. It's so refreshing. And what I like about it too, it's that outside of all right, you had some rumors about Verlander, you had some rumors about Senga, but a lot of what the Mets are doing is like under wraps. There's not a lot of rumors that come up. There's a lot of shock. Like this Correa thing, granted, last week, right before he signed with the Giants, there was like a 2-hour window where everyone was like, oh, wow, that we were all of a sudden on Correa. And then they announced a giant deal right after that. But this whole Correa thing, we were all sleeping outside of Hernandez because he was working outside of Newark Airport at 3 in the morning, and he saw the news. But it's crazy. And again, with all this
Well,
money,
Scherzer was the same way last year.
yeah.
Everybody was talking about how Scherzer was never going to go to the Mets, that
And
he
where'd he
hated
go?
the Mets, that all this stuff. And then all of a sudden, boom,
Money talks.
Scherzer signs with the Mets. And everybody's like, that doesn't make sense.
Yep.
And it does make sense. Cohen paid him the most money in the history of the sport.
Yep.
It makes a lot of sense.
It does.
At least AAVY, but
yep. Oh, I mean, money talks at the end of the day.
money talks.
And talking
the
about
only one it doesn't talk to is Jacob deGrom. And by the way, I listen. Jake did a post in the New York Post. He took out a whole page, which cost thousands of dollars to do that in the Post. So I'll table my annoyance at him or disappointment in him for now. And I know it was probably half-hearted in his agent. It was like, listen, you got to do this. You're getting killed.
Little PR boost over there.
Yes. But all that being said, he's still one of the best players that has ever stepped
Correct.
foot for this organization.
Correct. 100%.
However, if anyone doubts that the Mets wouldn't have gone to 5 years when push came to shove, you're out of your mind.
Oh, yeah.
There is no way that one call from Cohen saying, I have 5 years on the table from the Rangers. If you match it, I'll be back home. They would have done it. They didn't do that. And again, I don't think DeGrom want to be here. I actually don't think he's one of those guys looking at the TV and saying, man, I made a mistake. I think he's 100% happy where he went. But if anybody thinks that the Mets wouldn't have gone to 5 years, they're out of their minds. They would have.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no, they would have. At the right deal, I think they would have. And honestly, with the money he got, good for him. Mm-hmm. Let him have a great time out in Texas.
It's the only sour part of this offseason for me.
Correct.
And I like Verlander. I love Verlander. He's going to be a Hall of Famer. The only sour part is that Jake is not where he should be.
Yeah.
That's the only part that still stings a little bit. Cohen has made sure that the fans forget it, essentially.
Yeah.
But, other than that, and listen, that's part of free agency. Every team, loses a player eventually. It seems like the only team that's never lost a top player is basically the Yankees. But yeah.
Yeah. And listen, last offseason, when Steven Matz went away and Cohen wanted to bring Matz in, and they went out and turned Matz into Escobar, Canna, Marte, and Scherzer. Now DeGrom goes, and you spend even more. Look what he turned DeGrom into right now. And listen, it's not often that you lose a 2-time Cy Young Award winner and replace him with a 3-time Cy Young Award winner, including this last year in Verlander, a little older. But I actually do trust Verlander to get 28, 29, 30 starts.
Oh, yeah.
Which is good.
At least for the next year. Whoa.
Oh, we got
news from Rich behind the glass.
Look at this breaking news. Trevor Bauer's suspension has been reduced from 324 to 194 games. Bauer has now been reinstated. I mean, that's pretty big news. Look at this ESB Baseball podcast crew right here. Breaking news as we go. That's going to make those Dodgers-Mets matchups very interesting, seeing how Bauer does this year.
I'm going to put it to you this way. I think the Dodgers cut him. I don't think he ever pitches a pitch for the Dodgers. And I have a feeling that there is going to be a very limited market for him. I really do. And I don't know what the call is. He's going to be making his full salary if the Dodgers cut him. So basically anybody in baseball can sign him. Where does he go?
That's a good question. I mean, me personally, I wouldn't touch him.
I wouldn't.
But if you want to talk about a heel evil empire Steve Cohen vibe, he goes out. It's not going to happen. But imagine they went out there, talk about that heel vibe. I mean, the Mets would become the most hated team in baseball if they did that.
As a fan, that would be difficult to root for me.
I agree.
I would not go to a game that Trevor Bauer was participating. Like, I'm not going to go see him pitch at any point in time. So I think Bauer's got to go to one of those places that is basically exile.
I
You
was
know
about
what
to
I'm saying?
say, go like the Midwest, one of
Like
these,
Colorado.
yeah, one of these 11 teams that we mentioned before that the Mets tax is higher than their payroll, like the Pirates, or one of these random teams.
Something like that, where he's not going to get a lot of attention. He can kind of rebuild himself, and then in a year or two, he goes and signs a new contract. But I don't see him playing for. I don't see him playing for the Dodgers. Certainly, they're not that kind of
Yeah,
organization. They're a class organization. I will say that about the Dodgers, and they're all about public image. I mean, they're trying to be the gold standard of baseball, and you can't be the gold standard of baseball with Trevor Bauer playing for your team.
especially in LA with all those stars out there,
Yeah.
and they have the spotlight out there in LA. And Joe, you hit it right on the head here. Speculations that Dodgers will release Bauer, which makes sense. I could tell you another team though in California that has a lot of money right now. The Giants.
Giants.
They're not.
But again, but that's not Gabe Kapler though. You know, Gabe Kapler runs that ship over there. This is not his kind of guy. So I'm gonna say there's at least 15 to 20 teams who won't even call him.
Yep.
Not to mention the fact that he is a pain in the ass on a daily basis. Forget the bullshit on the side. He's a pain in the ass to deal with. You put up with that because he's a great pitcher when he pitches, but with this allegation, he might have to go pitch a year in Korea or something like that. So
Korea could be a possibility. Maybe a small market team.
He's probably too good not to get a job somewhere.
Correct.
And maybe again, San Diego might be one of those.
That's not a bad spot. And they did want Senga. They wanted Senga, and the Mets called him.
But I don't know. I don't see the Cardinals doing it. Are the Red Sox desperate enough? I don't know.
It's tough. Whichever team takes him on, there's going to be a lot of heat to go with it. So it makes sense to be a team that's in a very fair weather market, not a very passionate market. Try to build up some value, try to silence the noise, and then hit free agency again next year.
The
try to
thing
latch
with
on
Bauer
somewhere.
is, I know people don't like to do this because they can't quantify it. It's bad karma. Why bring that? If you're a playoff team, like let's say you're the Padres or the Mariners, right? You've never won. Bringing in a guy with these allegations against him and who was suspended for a year and a half. I'm sorry, that's bad karma.
Yeah,
you don't do that. Yeah, same thing with the Mets. You don't do that if you're the Mets, and because you can't afford it. Bring up a good point. Astros probably could afford it. They've had all the bad karma they can.
Yeah.
They don't give a crap. They beat everybody anyway. Everybody hates them outside of their own city. So nobody's going to care. And that city's so championship drunk, nobody's going to give a crap.
Correct.
So you might be right. Rich put that in the chat. You might be right. The Astros might be the spot.
It's not a bad play.
I wouldn't touch them. That's just me.
Correct. The way this Mets offseason has gone, the fan base is elated. The only somewhat negative thing was the DeGrom situation, and we completely got over that as soon as the Verlander news hit 2 days later, and then the spree of moves, Nimmo re-signing, awesome. A lot of good karma, juju right now with the Mets, good vibe. I won't want to change it. I do not want to touch Bauer. Let him go somewhere else. We'll see what happens. But, Joe, gun to your head. If the Mets make one more move, what do you think that move is this offseason?
I think they got to trade for Liam Hendricks. Listen, I like Ottavino. I like Robertson. I like those as short-term deals, trying to catch lightning in a bottle. I mean, they're better than lightning in a bottle. But if you pair Hendricks with Edwin Diaz, the back of your bullpen is unstoppable. Yeah. I mean, flat out unstoppable. That would be my one move. If I had a 1B move or a second move, is to try to find another thumper somewhere. It doesn't even have to be. I know there's talks of Eloy Jimenez being available. They need a little bit more power somewhere beyond what they have.
Hey, listen, if you want a thumper, and Cohen's buddy now is Scott Boras, maybe a reunion with Conforto.
Yeah, you know what? The Conforto thing, it doesn't make that much sense right now because I think that Conforto wants to go to a place where he has a chance to play every day. And he doesn't have that with the Mets right now. He doesn't have a clear path for that.
Correct.
As much as I think he would be very good for this team in a pseudo platoon with Canna and Vogelback and stuff. But, yeah, Dodgers do plan to release Bauer.
Okay, so there it is. So breaking news with the Bauer getting reinstated. Somewhat breaking news as well, as Joe predicted. Dodgers will be releasing Bauer. So listen, by the next time we meet in January, we'll see where he goes.
But that is their plan.
Yeah, and listen, if either New York team goes out there and signs Bauer, we might have to have another one of these, because that's going to be. I can't, unless a team, which is not going to happen, goes out there and trades for an Ohtani or a Trout. There's no other news that would stir up that much controversy than if one of the New York teams brings him Bauer, which is not going to happen. So yeah. We'll see. But I do think I agree with what you said before, though. One last move, I think it's going to be the bullpen, whether it's a Hendricks, whether it's a Chafin. And we did that offseason prediction show. And if our producer doesn't mind pulling that up real quick, just to look at the offseason predictions that we did last month, I did have Chafin come into the Mets 2 years, $16 million. That's just about what Ottavino got. I think Ottavino might have been a little more, but he was right around that 216 number. But look, Senga hit. Rodon, I had Rodon, and ended up giving Verlander. Robertson hit. Ottavino hit. Nimmo hit. Conforto and Chafin and the Alonso extension. The only few things left to happen. I would take either Chafin or Hendricks. I think Hendricks is the better reliever. I would want the Mets to add one more lefty. I like having the two lefties available, especially with a lot of lefty thumpers. But you bring in a guy like Hendricks, he's going to get a lefty.
Escobar's a switch hitter, so that helps.
Correct. Yeah. And you get a stud righty reliever, he's going to get out a lefty batter. I mean, it's going to happen. But you like to have versatility. I'll take either or. And Joe, we got your lineup here as well. Both of us hit on Senga. The big difference between us, we did one lineup getting DeGrom back, one getting Nimmo back. It ended up being Nimmo here. But you got Chafin as well. Britton, I thought, was a nice move that you had here with the opt-out too. But we'll see what ends up happening. Maybe it's the Scott Barlow. The trades could certainly still happen too. But I agree. If there's one more move, I do think it's going to be in the bullpen. We'll just see what that piece is.
Yes, sir. So, listen, we'll just hope from there. And you can follow us on YouTube. This episode, like all of our other episodes, will be up on Empire State of Baseball on YouTube. You can click on each individual video, like, share, and subscribe them to anybody that you know, and get the notification when our videos are uploaded to the YouTube page.
Yep, exactly. So go ahead, YouTube, go check us out. And this is going to be our final episode of 2022. Again, unless one of these New York teams gets Bauer, it's not going to happen. We don't really anticipate any of the groundbreaking news between now and then. If it does happen, we'll let you know. We'll reach out on social media, Instagram, Twitter. We'll let the fan base know that we will have a live episode. Again, download the Twitch app, because that's how you will know if we go live. You'll get that notification on your phone. But anyway, our next scheduled episode for our off-season series will be episode number 36 on January 23rd of the year 2023. National Baseball Hall of Fame. We'll do a little bit of a Hall of Fame talk, maybe talk about Mets and Yankees Hall of Fame history, do some proposals and votes from the four of us who we want to see get into this Hall of Fame as part of this year's bracket there. So more to come January 23rd, our Hall of Fame special. But Joe, before we wrap up for tonight, any thank yous for the group out there?
Well, thank you to all our listeners. Thank you to Rich for helping us produce today in the background. He's sick with a little sore throat. So, he needs a little cough drop, codeine lollipop to put himself to bed today. But other than that, thank you to everybody. I hope you have a safe, healthy, and happy Christmas and any other holiday that you celebrate. And we will see you in the new year with a fun episode and hopefully some more news on both the Yankees and Mets.
Yep, exactly. I definitely echo those words. Happy holidays to everyone out there. Christmas in just a couple of days. Hanukkah in progress as well. And New Year's just a week or so away. Thank you, all the chooches in the chat. Thank you, Rich. Hope you feel better. Thank you, Tom. Joe, thank you. It's been a great hosting this year in 2022 with you guys. definitely looking forward to 2023. And thank you, Mr. Steve Cohen, for giving us a fun offseason. And will he make it a three-peat tonight? Let's see. Correa, a night ago, we had the McCann trade, and they brought in Mendick last night overnight. Third time's a charm. We'll see if maybe they get this Hendricks deal done. Fingers crossed. But, thank you again, everyone. Looking forward to seeing you all next year. Happy holidays, and take care.